Hey, welcome to another episode of Straight from the Desk. I'm very happy to show you a new format. This time it's called the Coaching Feedback Fiesta. And the new format is designed to give feedback to your models. We'll start with the models that I discuss with my students during the private coachings. The private coachings here in Petrine take actually a lot of time. I would say I roughly invest about 40 to 50 hours a month for the private coachings and for the preparation work that goes into that. And I think a lot of the problems that we discuss during those sessions are actually the same for all of you or for all of us. So I think it's quite a good opportunity to show that progress with you and to show you the ideas and the tips and tricks behind the progress. So yeah, let's have a look at the first example. The first example here is a head that was painted by our supporter Bob. Bob tried to emulate the skin tones like I've explained it in the Uncle 4 video. So you can see he placed the highlights and shadows according to where he thought they would belong. So let's first take a look at the placement of highlights and shadows here. On the left, you can always see the student's work, and on the right hand, you can see my Photoshop suggestions for that. So here in that case, we will start first adding a few highlights, correcting the shapes of the highlights as well, and then moving on to the shadows and introducing some color variation. Alright, so let's see how that looks. So here, if you compare the left image to the right image, they still look the same. And I think the biggest issue that we can spot from far away is that missing highlight here on the forehead and actually the shape here along the nose and the nostril. The highlight really doesn't cover all the surface, it's just in a certain area. So let's see what colors we find. First picking the colors that we find here in the model. So there's like the medium highlight tone, the bright highlight tone, shadow tone, and some of the stronger shadow tones from the lower part of the neck and the side of the ear. We'll also add a brighter tone to suggest really a reflective skin later on. So anyway, we're first starting with that really bright highlight tone here, adding highlights to the parts that will really face the sun or our light source. So here on the top of the forehead, these small wrinkles here to the side, the eye wrinkle, also the volume above the nose, on the nostril, here on the second volume of the cheek. We're now starting to blend those out, and you can see here by already pulling the highlight over the cheek and like stretching it here up into the lower part of the eye and shaping this here more in a round manner, also pulling these here longer towards the side of the head. We already get a slightly different feel for the volumes here to the side of the head. And just gently softening it out. So here on the top you can see that this area really actually completely missed the highlight, or there was no highlight there. So it's quite important here to add that highlight on top of that area where we have that dramatic shift in angle. Also here on the top of the brow, not really place the highlights somewhat in the mid area of the highlight, and we really want to try to, even for the small volumes here, such as the separate wrinkles on the forehead, we really try to place the highlight on the upper edge of these and then soft it out according to the shape of the single wrinkle. So also here, the ones on the forehead, and just soft these out here. here you can quite nicely see it actually. If you see it from the side there, that edge on the top would definitely be like the brightest spot. Also here on the nostril, really the highlight needs to be on the top of the shape, then pulled forwards to match that teardrop shape of the nostril itself. One quite important factor in how we perceive that shape here is actually the dimension of the shadow line that Bob painted. So I'm now trying to, with like slightly darker tone, trying to smaller that line so it's not all that prominent, because we really want the shadows here on the lower part of that fold. And here also to the lower side, because this is a wrinkle that is really disappearing very gently. We're trying to get also a gentle transition towards the shadow area. And also here, we're darkening the side of the temple area here to the side of the head. And softening out these highlights here as well a little bit. Adding a little bit of shadow color here to the side of the bridge of the nose. Picking some of the shadow colors that we picked before. Introducing really a darker shade to the temple area to really define that kind of harder edge between the temple area and the volume of the forehead. And you can see by really having the highlights a bit more prominent, softer in some areas, and now followed by the shadow adjustments, especially under the cheek. We can see that this really looks kind of different already from how we can perceive the volumes of the face. Softening that here out still so it really matches the shape. Also here with a slightly lighter tone, I'm reducing the depth of the shadows on the forehead, because the area really catches a lot of light. So here we're just introducing smaller painted on wrinkles that connect the strong wrinkles to the side of the eye with the soft skin tissue under the eye. Also shaping this here, adding a few highlights to the top of the ear as well. And here to the lower side as well. And yeah, correcting the dot of color there on the earlobe. And you can see that the neck is a little bit neglected at this point, so we see that there is a wrinkle there, and we're just adding a little bit of a stronger highlight there, and then softening it out towards the side. Also adding a bit of highlight here to the raised elements to the side of the neck, and then trying to get like a nice offset of the light from the top of the forehead over the cheeks to the head. Still having in mind that we really want to have like the same skin tone on both elements and really have them work well together. The area will be later on separated with a beard, so a slight color difference is fine, but you don't just want that to be really different. Yeah, you can see flipping on and off the shadows. We can really nicely compare that in Photoshop to see, okay, where do we need more shadows, and we need a little bit more shadows here in the lower side under the head and towards the ear. Okay, now that the highlights and the shadows are adjusted, I think we can really see the difference on how we can perceive volumes better, and it makes the face quite a lot easier to read actually, especially the adjustments around the nose and the area here, where we really kind of reshape the highlights, makes quite a difference. So I think once we add the color variations according to the color zone theory, you can see how much that helps to bring the skin to life. Alright, so let's see how that looks. Alright, so you can see I'm first emphasizing some of the neutral shadows using a dark desaturated red brown, just to create a little bit more depth before we go into the color zones. And I'm working with a little bit of red here on the lower side of the nose, a little bit in between the nose and the eye shadow, and on the lower side of the cheek and a little bit in the ear, before we can continue glazing in some blue, like a dark desaturated blue here to the lower side of the face. And no matter what color we will use later on for the beard, these color zones are quite nice to introduce now, and we can connect the beard and the face using a little bit of a glaze of the tone of the hair to get that transition done. You can see I'm also introducing some yellow as an impact of the sunlight to the forehead. Make sure not to introduce it too bright or too vivid, so we're just really carefully glazing that in as an indication of the sunlight. We're also introducing slightly more color variations here to the head because it's a larger head and we can just show a little bit more. Here, some orange to the side of the bridge of the nose to have a nice contrast to the top of the nose, and also a little bit of purple here in the area of the soft skin tissue under the eye, just to give him a slightly more worn and tired look. But again, not too intense. I think that looks good already. One thing that I still want to do is I want to push the contrast to give the suggestion of satin skin or even glossy. So we're pushing those specular highlights here just to define the gloss of the skin. So imagine the Templar Knight on its way to Jerusalem. So you would definitely get some satin sweaty skin. So we're trying to get that look across by introducing strong white highlights that are softened out like quite shortly, following the shape of the object. So on that round nose tip, a round softened out reflex, and here slightly different shape, so more the shape of a teardrop here on the top of the nose, top of the nostril, and also here to the top of the forehead, just to intensify the look here and the gloss definition. So yeah, I think the difference is quite amazing with just these few retouches, introducing the color variation, also the gloss. We still want to pull that strong highlight look here also on areas like the top of the ear. So first placing the highlights and then softening them out. It's quite ideal to do these small softened out highlights using either the loaded brush or a bit of feathering. Also softening out these highlights here to the side where the prominent highlight will be caught. Yeah, you can see by flipping on off the layer of the colors, you can see that we already have like a lot of variation going on. It works quite well. I just want to push like the intensity of the deep red-brown shadows under the beard, just to give it a little bit more of like a three-dimensional definition. Okay, the last adjustments that I think would be nice is slightly more of a pinkish shade towards the earlobe, just to get that impact of the blood running through the thinner skin tissues. In areas like ears, you also have that subsurface scattering of light. We won't go so far here, but just to have that slightly more vivid color here in the detail area like that. Alright. So, overall I think this is quite a fantastic example to see that not only the contrast and the colors you use make a difference, but also really the shape of the highlight. And here we really tried to get like a nice offset of the light from the top of the forehead over the cheeks to the throat, also keeping the highlights here to the side. and slightly brighter than before, also increasing the shadows and the color variations. So yeah, I think this is quite a nice sum up on how to achieve a nice look for a skin tone in the face. Alright, hope you enjoyed that video, hope you enjoyed the new format. Please leave a comment on what you think could be adjusted for the format, or what you would like to discuss here. Alright, thanks for your support.